Well, happy Wednesday to you fine folks. Wednesday night, political potluck. I'm your host, Patrick Thorpe. Sorry for starting a little bit late. I was trying to get my logo to work to put it up there, have a nice little splash page, but did not work out the way I wanted to. That's okay. Glad you're with me tonight. We have a great show planned out. We have congressional candidates Laura Lombard from the 4th District. She's going to be live with us here in a bit, discuss her campaign, discuss her platform, and discuss notable news. After that, hopefully, we'll have Michael Butler come in and join us and discuss some local and national politics as well. And I'm planning on having one special guest on tonight. I'm not going to tell you who it is because I do not want to disappoint you. All that and more the next, let's say, hour and a half, 90 minutes of political potluck. What do you say? So, my first guest tonight is going to be Laura Lombard. She has a little one at home, so we're hoping he cooperates for a little while and let her tell you all more about her campaign and what she's doing. Laura Lombard and I have a very special relationship. Known her for a few years when she came to the Kansas political scene. We worked together on her campaign last time. I'm very proud of the work she's doing this last time and also this campaign cycle. She's up against incumbent Ron Estes. Boo! And I think we can all agree that that Ron Estes and rubber stampers in Congress need to go. So with that in mind, I'm going to bring Laura Lombard on, and she can tell you a little bit more about what she's doing. Hello, Laura Lombard. How are you doing?
I'm good, Patrick. How are you?
I am fantastic. So, sorry for the delay.
No problem.
But thanks for joining us tonight. So, Laura, I gave kind of a somewhat warm introduction.
Okay.
She's running for Congress in the 4th District of Kansas, and I'll let Laura tell a little bit more about her campaign and what she's running on. Go ahead, Laura.
Sounds good. Well, thanks, Patrick, first for having me on tonight. I'm excited to be one of your first guests on this weekly podcast, right?
This is week 2. I should have said that. This is week 2, guys. We're week 2, guys.
Yeah.
Laura, you're the first candidate guest.
First candidate guest. Wow. Okay. Well, I'm honored. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I'm honored to have you.
Yeah. No, I'm excited to be here and to talk with your audience here. And so yeah, I launched my campaign last month. Originally, I didn't think that I was going to be running this year. I had, as Patrick mentioned in his earlier introduction, I have a little one. He's now exactly 6 months old. So I wasn't sure, him being my first, how running a campaign and being a new mom was going to mesh together.
Well, I'm kidding.
Yeah. but it's turned out great. Johnny's amazing. He is a politician in the making in his own right, even again at 6 months old. Loves people and just having a great time with me, being my stay-at-home campaign buddy right now while we're playing stay-at-home with everybody else during the coronavirus. So, and he's the inspiration for my running this year. He was both maybe the reason I thought I wouldn't run, but then also the reason that I decided to go ahead. We have to get a handle on what's happening in this country for our kids. For us too, but looking down the road to the future, I want to make sure that my son and all of his friends end up having the same type of opportunities that we did coming out of our childhoods. So that's really the inspiration for running this time around, and I look forward to trying to fight in Washington to make sure that all of our children have a really bright future.
Wonderfully said. Something that I noticed about not just your campaign, but in Kansas in general.
Yeah.
For those that haven't noticed, sorry, I wanted to scroll that. For those that haven't noticed, we actually have a completely female lineup this year. Not just for your race, but also the Senate race, 2nd District.
All of them, all the congressional districts.
Yep.
Yeah, so it's Sharice Davids, of course, is defending her seat this year up in the Kansas City area. Michelle De La Isla is running in the 2nd District. She is amazing. She's the mayor of Topeka. I've gotten to know her over the last several weeks, starting my campaign. And then we've got Callie Barnett and Christy Davis in a primary, believe it or not, in the big one. I've gotten to know Callie a little bit better, but both great candidates, and looking forward to working with either lady who ends up going through the primary. But no matter what, we're going to have 4 women running for Congress this year, and either Barbara Boyer or Usha, running for Senate as well. So either way, we've got a full female Democratic slate this year, which is pretty exciting and huge news for Kansas.
That is exceptional news. I think in the if correct me if I'm wrong, in Congress, women represent 23% of the body.
About 20. It's under 25%. When of course we make up 51% of the population. So we've still got a ways to go before we're more on par with where we should be.
Well, like I mentioned before, I helped lower the campaign prior, and one of the reasons I did is I truly believe in female leaders. Hashtag the future is female. What I've noticed about female or women politicians in general, especially in the House, is bills they put forward, bills they support, and they typically, obviously, the more right-wing conservative female representatives, they have a different set of focuses, but the more common ground between all women politicians is their need to support the family.
Absolutely.
On the right wing side or left wing side, whether that's just all the rhetoric you hear from the right and left, it all kind of binds together around the family.
Yeah.
Something I was always interested in, and why I love being a Democrat, is ideas like paid family medical leave, and I know you are a big supporter of that, Laura.
Absolutely. Both paid family leave for right after or in, let's say, the first year of a child coming into the world. I think that both parents should have an opportunity to have some level of time at home with their child. So I think having 12 weeks for both parents, not necessarily at the same time. You could do 12 weeks for the mom, initially, and then 12 weeks for the dad. But that provides, a fair amount of time at home with your child to get to, really raise your child, from day one, instead of having to put your baby into daycare, too early. So yeah, paid family leave, paid sick leave. I mean, we're seeing right now with the coronavirus, so many families affected where maybe someone has come down with the coronavirus, right? And they need to be home. We need them. They need to be home. We need them to be home. And they shouldn't lose their livelihood. It shouldn't be a choice between your health and your economic well-being and your family. So I think most of the policies that I want to put forward help protect a family, whether that's looking at more universal health care so that, again, people aren't worrying about going bankrupt over medical issues, or paid family leave, so on and so forth. And I think that's really important.
So I am a single parent, and I know you are as well.
Yep.
And, I didn't have the luxury. I shouldn't say luxury. That's a bad word for what I'm trying to get across.
Okay.
But, with the quarantine, COVID-19, have the opportunity to stay home with your baby.
Right.
Man, I was on the road not 24/7, but it was more like 15 hours, 7 days a week, 365. There was never a break when Katie, my daughter, was born.
Right.
And if I had taken leave, I would have to go into my PTO, which if I got sick later on,
You're done. Yeah.
So it was a choice between giving up my sick pay,
right,
or working, right? So
right. Yeah. It's time with your daughter or money, right? I mean, it's it's a risk, like you said, getting sick later.
I think you've known me long enough, and any parent could tell you this. Money can't replace time. Just can't. It just can't do it.
No, not when it comes to your time with your kids. I mean, there's no question of that. I mean, it's been a weird campaign for me, but in a weird way, a good one, because it's forcing me to be here with my baby. And he was gonna be my campaign buddy no matter what. But we're getting all this extra time. That's a plus for me on a personal note. I know that doesn't necessarily reflect the experience of many of the voters out there who, everyone has their different experience with what's going on with COVID.
Sure.
But for me, I've gotten a little extra time with Johnny, which is, you don't get that back.
You do not. You do not. And you have quite the kid there has a big personality. So
he does.
No doubt comes from the mom, right?
Yeah. I let's see. We decided that I get 66% of the credit based off of how much genetics come from the mom. So I'll take it.
Yeah. But the red comes from the dad side of the family.
Red comes from he gets credit for that.
That's all he gets. Just the red hair. We're done.
Red hair and a double thingy back here. What they call that? A double
the cowlick.
Cowlick, yeah, a double cowlick. That I don't get credit for either.
I had an awful cowlick on this side where it would stick out like alfalfa. Could not. My mom could not get that down at all. It was ridiculous.
Not having that problem yet, but we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
We'll see.
That kind of steers back in the direction of women candidates.
Yeah.
One thing, especially for liberal-leaning Democratic candidates, women and some men, but really women are champions of this. Is that outside of Bernie Sanders, is that universal health care.
Mm-hmm.
I recently watched a video, and of course, we all see videos on the YouTube. The reporter walks around and asks questions. He was in Europe, right?
Yeah.
And he asked a question. One of the questions was, how much do you think it costs to have a kid in the United States?
Oh, God.
And the Europeans, after being asked questions about, a hospital bed or a visit to a doctor, things like that, and they were way low on that estimate.
Yeah.
I don't know, $3,000.
I wish.
Hosted at the lowest.
Yeah.
13,000, but on average about 23,000, right? And
if you don't have insurance
from countries with universal health care, we're blown away. Why don't you talk more about your stance on universal health care and how do we get there?
Yeah. So I think the example you just gave with having a child, just giving birth to a child is a prime example. Through my insurance, it ended up costing me about $7,000, which is still a lot of money. In Europe, it would cost me $0.
Is that deductible or is that after deductible insurance?
That's the deductible.
Oh God.
So yeah. So I mean, if you added up all the bills that between me and the insurance, and anyway, I don't even ridiculous amounts of money, right? I'm personally paying $7,000. So in Europe, it wouldn't cost me anything out of pocket to have a baby. It's, in terms of the actual delivery and whatnot. I also had another experience too when I was in college with universal healthcare in the UK, and I wasn't even a citizen there, right? But I was visiting and had an infection that I had to go to the emergency room for. No wait, got me in right away. Figured out what the issue was.
You're saying socialized medicine, there was no wait time?
I had no wait time in the emergency room. Ooh. I mean, I can't speak for every circumstance, but in my circumstance, exactly. I mean, they literally got me in right away. Figured out what it was. I had a secondary infection, gave me the antibiotics. And at the time I was 20 years old, I was in college, and I was an American freaking out, thinking in my brain, oh God, how am I going to pay for this? Right. So I asked them,
it's out of network.
Right. Really out of network, about as out of network as you get. And so I'm sitting there thinking, because this is towards the end of my study abroad, I'm like, God, I got $200 left in my account. I got to get home back to, anyway. So I'm freaking out. Right. And it turned out that they actually kind of chuckled when I said, well, how much is this going to cost? They were like, here are your antibiotics, get out of here, it's free. So ever since I've been a proponent of this concept of universal healthcare, because my experience and that, I mean, that's just an anecdote, but I've had other experiences, and friends who have lived abroad longer than that and whatnot. People are afraid to come here because if they get into trouble here, they know they're going to come back from the United States with big medical bills, right? Mm-hmm. So
that's right, yeah.
Right? Welcome
to the U.S. Don't get hurt here.
Exactly. Do not go. So that is all to say that
you teach your kids to rub dirt in it, right?
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, I think there's a lot of value to looking, heading towards the universal healthcare program. I just wrote an article that hopefully will be in the newspaper here soon, but But one of the things I touched on with that was healthcare, and especially when you're looking at what's happening now with COVID-19, you're looking at a situation where most people have their insurance through their employer. Well, if they're losing their jobs because of the financial crisis going on around COVID, and then therefore no longer have their insurance, or soon will be without insurance, it's an awful situation to be in, right? I mean, at the time of our human existence and our lifetimes, where you need health insurance the most, you don't have it because it's tied to your employment. You can get it off the exchange, and that's, I've done that through at various times, because I'm a sole proprietor.
Right.
But at the same time, I mean, I'm going to use another quick anecdote. My best friend she has a lot of health and lung issues. Just lost her job because of what's going on with COVID-19. She'll have her employer insurance for another month or so. But after that, she's got to go on the exchange. Well, it's going to cost her $700 or more for her insurance because she's
horrifying, man. I'm telling you.
Right. I mean, she's in a position, where she's got a spouse who, can help afford that until she gets another job. But that's not true for most people, right? So, what are you supposed to do? So I think if that isn't a case for universal healthcare, I don't know what is. And what I said in my article is, look, at the very least, we need to create a public option. That's a minimum. I mean, I would love to see an actual real universal healthcare program, but we have to do something.
So a lot of people who aren't highly informed on what the public option is, have no idea what you're talking about. Would you explain the public option?
Yeah. So a public option is the government would create a health insurance policy effectively that you could choose. It would be a much lower cost version of what you would get through private insurance. So that is, you still have private insurance as an option too. So if you do have a good insurance policy that you do like through your employer, you could stay with that, or you could buy into the public option. That's kind of what you hear more from, politicians like Biden. I'm not against that concept as at least a place to get us moving towards a universal healthcare system. I do want us to get there. But knowing kind of the political landscape of our country, I think there may have to be some steps in between. We'll see. I mean, I think for me, I have that kind of flexibility in thinking of, okay, how do we get to the goal? But how do we also, in the meantime, get to a place where more people are insured?
So I want to talk a little bit more about that, but there was a question in the feed,
okay.
And that's the greatest part. That's the best part about a live show like this, live podcast, is the guest. So a good friend of mine, Steve, he asks, how do you feel about term limits?
Oh, good question. So, I do think that term limits are something that we probably need to look into, given the fact that we have politicians who end up staying in their positions for decades. I think, I've thought about, what does a good term limit look like at times? Something along the lines of maybe two terms in the Senate, and the equivalent amount in the House. So that'd basically be 6 terms in the House, so 12 years each. Something like that. I'm not wedded to that as the formula, but something in that vein, I think would make sense. So, that way you get people who've had experience, in each institution, who can help, kind of mentor those who are coming in, who are kind of the junior. They've been, by 12 years, you've been in there for a while, right? You know some stuff, but you're not necessarily becoming a career politician in the way that we've seen, quite a few of the existing senators and congrmen and women.
Yeah, lifetime.
Yeah,
basically. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah.
Well, I think, and that the point you made is a fair compromise. Overall, addressing 12 years in each house, right?
Something like that. Yeah, something in that vein.
That's not a bad idea. I always thought the problem with term limits. One, we have a function for term limits. It's called election.
Theory. Yeah.
But for me personally, gerrymandering is the biggest issue.
Sure.
Because the way these districts are mandated,
That's great.
mandated generally.
That's right.
it always steers towards the incumbents if they are
Yes,
the party who controls their state governments.
correct. So like what we see here in Kansas.
Like what happened with Hutch, for example.
Yes, perfect example.
Yeah, perfect example.
Yeah.
I,
Yep.
I think I think a broader issue is how easily states are able to gerrymander districts
Hmm.
favor their incumbent political friends in the House. Senate works a little bit different, but in the House,
Hmm.
even in state government. So
Sure, absolutely. No, I mean, no question it's a huge issue, and we know that this district, the fourth district, historically included Hutchinson, which historically was more Democrat.
mhm.
So in order to, to take some of the Democratic base out of the district and dilute it into the first, which has historically been, primarily a Republican district,
Yeah.
definitely is hurt in terms of the ability to to win here. So
Well,
things are changing anyway, but still,
it's definitely steering in the left direction.
it is.
Yeah.
It
So
is.
it'd be interesting to see. In the last campaign cycle, I um, I firmly believe that a woman of your intelligence, your stature, the way you speak, and the way you carry yourself, man, you would have been the ideal candidate at that point to take on Ron Esses. Didn't work out, but here we are
Here
now.
we are.
Here we are now. Not, I think you're better for it. I think you're better
I
for
think
it.
I am too, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's true.
And you've got an advantage. You got little Johnny you can bounce around.
Yeah, there's John. Yeah, he definitely helps. But even beyond Johnny, I think you're right. I think that I'm stronger for it 2 years later.
Mhm.
And I will let me say this too. I appreciate James, James Thompson. You're really stepping up this time for me.
James Thompson ran before you.
Yeah, exactly. He was the candidate last time, and he has in a big way really stepped up to help me get my name out there again this time, and that's really appreciated by me.
Absolutely. So we talked about term limits. We kind of got off the beaten trail.
That's
I,
okay.
I want to
Steering me back.
steer you back towards universal health care because there are a lot of politicians. I'm not gonna lie, guys. I supported Biden from Jump Street. I,
Really?
I like Uncle Biden.
Huh.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm Bernie. I liked Bernie last cycle. I felt like that the party in general had steered towards more of Bernie's ideas. And if you see,
They have.
Biden's platform is it's not lockstep, but it's lining
No.
up some of the things that Bernie and his the new left direction of the party.
Hmm. Right. That's true.
So, but the big thing about politicians using universal health care is it's kind of like a crutch, like I'm for universal health care. Well, how do you get it done? You
You're right.
you talked about the political realities.
Right.
Speak more about it, Laura.
Yeah. I mean, there's a political reality in this country that healthcare has been one of the most difficult topics that politicians have been trying to deal with since 70s, 80s, maybe even before. There's
Mhm.
people have died on that hill before, and I'm not saying that's not a very worthy hill to die on, and I'd be, happy to be on that hill myself. But if we want to get there, I think that we need to talk about stories like I just did, my own personal experiences in experiencing someone else in other countries, universal healthcare. Try to dispel some of the I'm just going to the myths about the negative sides to universal healthcare. Um,
Mhm.
I also think people have to experience it, right? You have to bring people along. And again, I've had personal experiences, but a lot of the country hasn't, and a lot of the country has been told for years and years and years all these awful things about it. So if we can get to a point where maybe you do have, as an interim step, a public option so that more and more people see how it works or how a public version of it would work, I think that could be an interim step. Again, that's not at the expense of trying to get all the way to universal health care. But I do think we have to bring more people along and have more people understand the benefits to them versus these negatives that have been, I'm going to see,
No,
a lot of propaganda, towards, the anti universal health care.
I know what you're not trying to say. I know you're not trying to say. You're not fake news, right? Is that?
I'm trying not to use the word lies. You know,
well,
that's the word that's coming to mind.
It is what it is because
Yeah.
a lot of it. The one thing when I talk to I have Republican friends, cast,
Sure.
okay,
Sure.
and we have this conversation a lot. We have a great debate about it, and for Republicans, outside of the fear of socialism, right?
Right.
Is the money factor,
Sure.
all the
Yep.
time, money. Well, there the way the statistics are always skewed, if it's liberal side, Republican side, they're always skewed a certain way. But if you look at the raw numbers of money spent in the healthcare system now,
oh, it's ridiculous.
We would save
so much money,
hundreds of billions of dollars.
Yes.
Okay, and just in the premiums we pay out versus, not gonna lie, we have a universal healthcare system. Everybody would pay taxes, whether that's on a sales tax or income tax, it's going to get paid, right?
Right.
So the money we would all shell out is still lower than the premiums we pay out.
Oh, completely. And the risk is lower.
Yeah, and talking about deductibles, co-insurance, out of network,
prescriptions, yeah, everything.
Right. I mean, hundreds of billions of dollars.
Oh yeah, and again, you're lowering your risk, right? Because in our current system, I mean, your risk is so high. Even if I'm a relatively healthy 30-year-old, but that doesn't preclude me from getting cancer or something, right? You get cancer, you're headed down the road to financial bankruptcy, right? I mean, it's just it just is what it is in our current system. The other piece, though, too, that I would add to what you said is, the other argument here is, well, what about all the people who are hired within the private, all the jobs that would be lost? Two things on that. One, you would still need, to run a public option or a universal healthcare program, either one. You're still going to need workers to do that, right? So some of the folks would migrate into that system. But the other fact of the matter is most countries that have universal health care still have private insurance too. It's not necessarily an either or. The public, through the government part of it, covers certain aspects of it. And then you have private insurance for, if you want to have elective surgeries or you want to, maybe pay for more of the programming, whatever it is. I mean, whatever system you end up deciding to do. I don't know. I don't know of any country in the world that has a completely public healthcare system that doesn't have some level of private insurance associated with it.
Because you have to, right? I mean,
you don't have to. I mean, you could do it all, but I don't know that that's happened yet. And I don't foresee that being the case here in this country for a long time, if ever. Right. So,
well, I'll give you an example of like just an American, like maybe not purely American, but probably in Europe as well. But talk about elective surgeries. So most health insurance, like let's say comprehensive health insurance, covers elective plastic surgery. And that's I would assume that would not be something covered under the public option.
No, probably not. I wouldn't think so.
Unless it was needed, like it was a necessity, it was essential, right?
Yeah. I mean, if you want to get a nose job because you don't like your nose, that's one thing. If you've gone through a horrific accident and you need that's a different. I mean, there's
your science is out and stuff like that, right?
Right. So I mean, I think all of those things, all these things would have to be negotiated too, right? I mean, again, that's why I think even with Medicare as it stands, right? If we're looking at a Medicare for All program, even with Medicare, you have senior citizens who are buying additional insurance on top of it, whether it's Part B or Part C or anyway, so it already exists that way. So again, I think you still have, it's still possible to have a healthy private sector, health insurance industry as part of your economy. But the real piece of the universal healthcare part is that everyone is covered. All of your basic preventative healthcare needs are covered. If you do end up with cancer or you do have an accident, those types of you're pregnant and you have a child, all of those things are covered for you so that you're not worrying about going bankrupt over those types of things, right? And hopefully you're healthier to begin with, because you don't have to worry about what it's going to cost you to go if just for your yearly checkups and whatnot, right? Those are preventative in nature. So we want people going to the doctor in order to make sure that they're getting ahead of things before it's too late, right? Or too costly, or too this and that.
Like if I had better preventative healthcare insurance, you could have told me a long time ago that I put on 30 pounds.
I mean, there's that. There's always that. So, but I mean, all of that, nutrition, all of those things that people, Anyway, I just think that to your earlier point, we would be saving so much money in this country, both personally and collectively, if we went that route.
So we need to get off the subject. It's been
we've been on it for a while.
But the one thing I keep hearing, and I like the way it sounds, and I like the way it feels, is universal healthcare turns the healthcare industry from methods driven to results driven.
Yes.
I think
absolutely.
It happened. I want to say 30 years ago. We went from a results driven healthcare system to a profits driven healthcare system.
Yeah, absolutely.
We didn't always have health insurance companies.
Right.
Right. Not always. So I would love to actually get off this, but Steve actually had a good follow-up question on this. And if you can't on this, it's okay. It's a very detailed question, but I'm going to put out of curiosity, who would run the public option in a perfect scenario? I only have personally seen many in the VA system that have horror stories, which is honestly the thing that scares me about government run option.
That's a fair question. I mean, I guess the way that I would envision it is, going ahead in kind of a Bernie vein is expanding out what's already working within the Medicare program. I think, and if there's any seniors out there, listening to this today, and correct me wrong, I feel that Medicare is, the way it's run now is pretty well respected across the country, for the most part. And I hear what you're saying, Steve, about the VA system, because I know there's been a lot of issues around that. But I would hope that we could use a system that does seem to be working pretty well within the government to expand it effectively.
So you answered that as best as anyone could. Those questions take research. I mean,
and Lombard, it's a good question.
Yeah, if you don't know Lombard, she loves to read and research, and like the minutia of things.
Can't get into that.
Very endearing about her. So I'm sure if we gave her like maybe a couple of weeks to research,
she could better answer.
Yeah, she gave a better answer. But I'll give you a Patrick Thorpe answer. It's all about cheddar, all about that money. The VA system has been underfunded, especially the medical personnel in there. The people that are paid the best are the directors of, but the people on the front lines, I mean, they get paid good. Don't get me wrong. They get paid a livable wage, but if we want to attract the best talent to the VA network, the VA market, we need to increase salaries and hourly wages and quality of life for these workers in the VA to attract those better doctors, those better nurses. Not saying they're not good nurses right now or better doctors, but more people that have been maybe in the system longer. Okay, and
for the administrative side,
right? And that I think that would alleviate some. So, but we're gonna steer a little bit. Steer.
We're moving. Okay.
Moving beyond that. So I'm gonna put up David Glover's question.
Oh, David, here we go.
We're just
David.
We kind of skip the rock over because there's a lot of important things to talk about. But
sure.
David Glover asks, what's your thought on legal weed?
Good question, David. So I am a proponent of the idea of us legalizing weed in general, not just for medical. I think we need to do it across the board. It just makes sense. I think that the states that haven't done it yet, like Kansas, I think are missing a big opportunity from a revenue standpoint. In one of my consulting jobs I was doing the last couple of years, we were looking into the marijuana markets in terms of food safety realm. And I feel that it would behoove the federal government to really get ahead of that and set really strong standards for how medical marijuana or edibles and whatnot are developed and manufactured within the country. So I am very much for us legalizing, and then having some guidelines on how things are produced. But from a state level, and this is, I mean, I'm going for federal, but from a state level standpoint, I think that Kansas in particular could benefit from the revenue. Right now we're giving all that revenue to Colorado and Oklahoma and other states around us that have legalized, at least at the medical stage. And
Nebraska,
yes.
Oklahoma, Colorado, Missouri, Colorado. Yeah, I get that. Okay.
Whichever direction.
Kansas, yeah.
So I mean, I think we're missing out on a lot of revenue that would help the state. And I just can't see how it's, I mean, I am not personally a user, but I don't see how it's any worse than alcohol. So
there you go. There you go, David Glover. There's the
answer.
There's the answer. It's great to hear more politicians talking about it. I myself, I don't like. I'm going to push back a little bit on you. I never had an argument about, it's not as worse as alcohol is. We're not trying to. I hate using those comparisons, saying, well, alcohol does, kills people a year and blah, blah, blah. And that's why marijuana should be legalized, right?
Right.
I think I go back to some college humor, right? So a drunk driver ends up killing somebody. A stoner sits on his couch,
Well, see, there you go.
Right. But it would definitely take care of the black market as well. And like I said, bring money to the state.
Yeah, I mean, I think just from a financial standpoint, it makes a lot of sense. I think well, on the flip side, I think we also spend a lot of money incarcerating folks that don't need to be incarcerated over the issue.
Just the court alone. I was talking to an attorney who deals with it. Of course, I'm not going to reveal his name or his clients, but
right.
With the COVID-19 and everything being pushed back, I mean, these misdemeanors that get bonded out, things like that. I mean, he got a rack.
Yeah.
Of things that had to be pushed back. He goes, if we just legalize pot, I mean, one, he would lose a lot of money, okay? But the courts would be much more alleviated.
Absolutely. Our courts would, our prisons would.
Yeah, probation officers could focus on those hardened criminals.
Right. People who really are legitimately criminals, not just people who want to smoke their weed.
Yeah, not Johnny Pot Smoker. Not your Johnny, but Johnny Pot Smoker.
Right. Definitely not my Johnny.
So moving along to a topic that I think everybody is either A, sick of, or B, can't get enough of. COVID-19, right?
Yep.
And this is a Pandora's box of a can of worms buried inside of a blanket, right? We're about to unearth a lot of feelings, a lot of emotions, especially on my side. But I want to get your general reaction to the response of COVID-19, and I want to focus this on the congressional level. Go.
So on the congressional level, I was thinking you were going to go governor first, so I'm going to change my brain around a little bit. I think a few things.
Well, go. You can go governor first. That's fine. I was just tailored towards what you're running for.
What I'm running for, yeah. Well, I'll actually, since you've now put me on that train, I will go that direction. I think that the original relief bill did some things pretty well, and then other things have turned out not so great. First and foremost, with the small business loans, the payroll protection. I have personally been very disappointed in that. I thought that it was genuinely going to go to sole proprietors and small businesses. And I have yet to talk to anyone who's either a sole proprietor or legitimately a small business that's received any funding whatsoever in Kansas. I can't speak for the whole entire country, but so I'm hoping that in this next round that's being discussed in the House and the Senate, this will House first and then the Senate, that they will genuinely add money into this program that will go towards sole proprietors and small businesses. And by small business, I'm talking about the restaurant that's in trouble, that not the chain restaurant, but the local run restaurant, or the hair salon, or the boutique, or
shop, right?
Or the what?
Or the comic book shop, right?
or the comic book shop.
Yeah, yeah.
But the real down to earth, family owned, keeping families alive type businesses, right? I think all of us have been really disappointed in seeing, hearing these stories about hedge funds getting the money, or a major chain restaurant getting the money, or a lot of these companies that should have a fairly good reserve because they're successful, right? They've in a they're successful in a corporate sort of way, versus
Cash on hand, assets, and they
yeah.
they have debt tools to use. Right.
Exactly, exactly. That aren't open for someone who's, again, a family-owned restaurant or whatnot, right? So that has been for me the biggest disappointment in the response so far, and I would really like to see that amended in any packages that go forward. I think the $1,200 payments to individuals was a good start. I wish they had been more effective in how, for those who did not necessarily have a bank account on record, with the whole idea of having to wait because Trump was deciding he needed his name on a check as probably an election tool. um, I think is ridiculous. And I don't think it goes far enough. We've got to be realistic about the timelines that this is going to take, if we really want to be safe about what's happening with this disease. And we
Right.
are learning new things every day about this disease, not all of which are comforting. And I like some of the proposals that have been discussed at the very least, in terms of sending checks regularly to Americans, for 6 months, a year, depending on how long this ends up going. Um, I think that's going to be necessary. We've got to keep people afloat during a time period where legitimately people need to stay in.
So before we move on to the states and maybe also Trump and what he's doing as well, uh,
Yeah,
you know, I was, I always, I obviously I'm a political junkie. And I follow those politicians, especially here in Kansas. And
sure,
I can tell you that our Kansas representative that you're running against now, um, I don't always agree with him, but sometimes I do. I mean, Ron, we've met Ron,
we've
and
met Ron. Sure,
he has a niche expertise, and it should be explored, right? He's an
sure,
engineer, okay,
right,
but his response and toting the party line is embarrassing and has hurt the people that voted him into office, the farmers, the
yes,
small businesses. What it didn't hurt, unfortunately, were the people that donated to his campaign, and that's what pisses me off more than anything else. Is that
right,
he made sure he talked to the big corporations that happen to have smaller corporations underneath the much larger corporations
hmm,
for input, and then is surprised when the payroll protector doesn't operate the way that maybe leadership told him that it would,
right,
right? And
right,
only after that happened did he start talking to real small businesses,
right.
what difficulties they had. That's embarrassing.
Hmm. Absolutely.
What
I
what,
mean,
what would your strategy be? Who would you talk to about this and listen to?
well, so when you said there his leadership, you mean the GOP leadership?
That's right.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I mean, if we know now that on the Republican side, the bent is towards helping corporations over small businesses, right? So when you say who would I talk to, it's more what would I expect out of legislation. And I think now we've learned a lesson through this first stimulus bill, right? That we need to better define what is a small business and who is going to be getting this money. And the original definition was so broad, and the amount of 500 employees is a substantial business. And if you have 500 employees, you should be having the types of reserves and access to credit like you mentioned earlier, right? To
Right.
make it through a crisis. So what legitimately is a small business? And what's the criteria for the type of business that should receive this help? And I think it needed to be a lot more narrow, and it should be going forward. And it's not to say that every single small business is out there, there's got to be some flip to that too, right? That how are you doing before this all happened, and so I think there's got to be that balance, but the definition of what a small business is needs to be legitimately what a small business is, and that's what I'd be looking for in bills.
I'll tell you, the other part was reading those stories about publicly traded companies.
Yeah, that should not be included in this.
Like anytime you're able to say we have, I don't know, $5 million cash on hand, and we have 1.5 debt obligations, and yada yada. I mean, it's like, come on, guys.
Right.
Why are you in the honey hole for? You don't need to be in the honey hole.
Right.
Yeah, I'm sure that so one of the aspects that Steve brought up, I'm gonna put it up as well.
Mm-hmm.
Steve's firing on all cylinders, talking about how either party was able to stuff those bills, right? Those
Sorry, reading his question.
Bill. Right.
Yep.
Well, it wasn't really a question, more of a
statement.
And that was an issue that I had, because they were too focused on a broader scale instead of thinking of more of a micro kind of analysis and pushing it that way.
Sure.
And when people were complaining about it, and even Democrats, I'm like, guys, I wish they would withdraw some of this stuff, focus on the micro part of the bills, push it along, because we're gonna get another bite at the apple.
Right.
It's happen. So how did you feel about the whole bill process originally?
You and I talked about this a little bit, I think, but and we had a little bit different viewpoints on it. But so to what Steve said, I think that having too much pork in each of these, again, on both sides, it wasn't one party or the other, it was both. And that's, I think to some degree, in any legislation, you see that. Not necessarily that's a good thing. I'm just saying I think it's almost in the nature of the politicians to want to try to get in as much of their stuff as they can. But I agree that in an emergency like this, you need to streamline it, right? You need to get to what's needed to help the people. And where I think, Patrick, you and I disagreed a little bit, if I remember right, when we were talking, is that you wanted the money now, right? And I was wait.
I think we were screaming at one another is what we were doing.
I don't think we were screaming. I don't think there was screaming involved. But
I think I was.
Maybe you were. I was like, Patrick, calm down. No, I think I do think that there was some legitimate reasons for the Democrats in the Senate to push back on what the Republicans initially proposed, coming from the Senate bill side of it. And yes, that delayed it for a few days, but I do think the American public in that regard got a better deal because they did that. And on the flip side of that, in the House, when the Democrats put forth a plan and the Republicans pushed back on certain things, that's actually how it's supposed to work, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, on every bill, on everything, you propose something, you get pushback, and hopefully that means in the end you get a better deal for Americans, and in different constituent groups. That should be how it works. So in the sense of that actually being successful for the first time, it seems like a long time, I think that was good. But yeah, there was a lot of pork on both sides put in there that I know a lot of folks were upset by, and understandably so.
If Laura Lombard was in the House today and she was part of leadership in the House and got to this new bill, what are some things that Laura Lombard would like to see in this bill?
Yeah, well, like I said earlier, I think an ongoing payment for American families. Is one of the proposed versions of that is $2,000 per adult up to a certain income level, and $500 per child to help families stay afloat. I think, again, we need to put parameters around that. That lasts as long as the threat of coronavirus keeps people out of, in a big way, out of jobs. I would like to see a small business plan that gets money right to small businesses, not even necessarily just for payroll, but just to make sure that operationally they're able to stay open. Mm-hmm. That's a big piece of it. More money for hospitals and healthcare providers through this has to happen. The supplies that hospitals need to be successful with this, So far, we've been lucky in Wichita that the rates have been still pretty low, and I attribute that to the fact that we've as a city have done what we need to do, staying at home
For the most part.
for the most part.
Except if you go to
But
Lowe's, then it's a different story if you go to Lowe's.
well, apparently, yeah, I saw that. I saw the photo of yeah.
Kidding me? Go ahead.
Right. No, I'm with you. But by and large, enough of us have stayed home and away from Lowe's, in big masses to flatten the curve. So in any case, but the point is, we still need to get out ahead of that. And I guess lastly, I'll say, and kind of as part of the supplies, making sure that we're getting enough testing out to all states. As we know, Kansas has been one of the states that's had the least amount of tests. And that's because they haven't been supplied to us from the federal government. So
You know they blame us for that, right?
I know they what? Sorry.
Donnie blames us for that, right?
Oh, I mean, of course.
Because we could have bought them, right? We could have bought them.
Yeah, well, some of the other states are right now. Some of them are going to South Korea to buy them so they get because again, they're not getting them from the federal government like we're supposed to.
Well, that's an answer for everything. Is you could have bought them, but COVID-19 didn't exist, Donnie.
No.
And it's
the passing the buck.
We could barter some things, but unfortunately the feds, I feel like the feds sometimes don't want to work with Democrat governors. So especially in red states, I don't know.
I have to wonder if that's part of the deal. Yeah, I mean, for sure. And Laura Kelly has been, out on the national news on more than one occasion regarding this issue, and I'm sure that that's not, not pleasing to Donald Trump. And yeah, I think anytime someone's successful like she is.
For those who don't know, Laura Kelly is our governor.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. Fair enough. But yeah, no, I mean, I think that Laura Kelly has been very successful at flattening the curve here and really making sure that Kansans are safe. Has everything been perfect? Of course not. But she's doing a really good job given the circumstances that she's got.
I'll tell you, I'm all about two good things and one bad thing, right?
Yeah.
Two good things about Laura Kelly and her response to COVID-19 was one, shutting down the schools. Okay, that was very important to me. One, to make a decision.
Yes.
To allow so that our educators could make a plan.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Absolutely.
We could have just kind of pushed it until it came to a certain point. I'm like, okay, now we have
over.
Right. And then you had to repeat a grade or whatever the case may be. At least then they were able to say, no, we're pulling the plugs. Educators, line your materials up, get those plans out. And I have to commend teachers. Like if you always thought teachers' jobs were easy, that they were asking too much, things like that, you homeschool parents now know.
Yeah.
That is not true. That is not the fact.
Absolutely.
So kudos to the teachers. I hope that some of your opponents are now proponents for what you do for our kids. Secondly, Laura Kelly's response to COVID. I'm getting was a response to the Hospitality and Restaurants Act, the bill that she helped champion with Denning to get being directed to hotels and restaurants immediately. Like it was funded, that money was out. It wasn't enough for all the claims made, but at least an attempt to get that money out there quickly.
Right.
And now for the bad thing, and you know what this is, the unemployment in our state, and I'm not shouldering the blame on Laura Kelly.
No.
Okay? No, she shouldn't take it all because she inherited a Republican governor, two Republican governors. She inherited a Republican-controlled Senate that took money away from important upgrades to our unemployment system. And I'm sorry, the crop in which we reaped is starting to come to harvest right now.
Right.
And unfortunately, Kelly has a lot on her plate. I realize that, but there are people out there, 1099 employees, for example, contracted labor, that are hurting.
Mm-hmm.
it isn't going anywhere. I was helping someone today on a website. The website, you couldn't even log in to the claims benefit to see what the status is of your claim. The federal money hasn't been employed yet into the system, and
Right.
I don't know if I buy the fact that the federal money is not here yet.
Part of it.
I don't think I buy that.
Yeah.
But unemployment in general, I know this is a hot topic issue. What do you like about an unemployment system, and what would you improve upon it?
You mean during COVID-19 or just in general?
How about in general? Like we're seeing the effects of, I think, an adequate and antiquated unemployment system.
Yeah.
What's your take on it?
Yeah, I think so. I think one of the things that's coming out of COVID-19, not just in Kansas but in general, is that it's now covering folks who are self-employed as well. And I think that's important. Sometimes when you're a self-employed person, maybe you're a contractor for X amount of time with one company, and you're kind of working on another or whatnot, but you need that stability too, and you need that safeguard as well. And more employers are going towards 1099, employees rather than or 1099 contractors versus employees. And then how is that person protected? So that was one area that I think that we should look into to provide some level of protection ongoing, not just because of this health crisis, to contract workers through unemployment. In terms of other things, I think with unemployment, again, we need to make sure that, on the one hand, there's the incentive still to find employment, but at the same time, making sure people's expenses really are covered enough, while they're looking. The reality is, I mean, for someone to find a job, if they lose their job from a layoff or for whatever reasons, it's going to take them 4 to 6 months, probably minimum, to find another job. And not many people can afford to save that amount of money in savings to cover themselves should that happen. It's just not the reality of most people's financial situation. So,
Wait, you're saying we're not big corporations?
right, exactly.
I'm sorry.
So, yeah. So I think being able to cover, having a system that's going to allow for that amount of time, because that is realistically what it takes to find a job in a lot of cases. So those are some of the things, at least off the top of my head, I would think would be helpful to change.
Yeah, I like that. I like that aspect. I agree with you that the time frame that people expect people to get a job, let's say get a job back in their field of work.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. You were working at a $70,000 job, and you lose it for X, Y, and Z reason. And yeah, you could go serve tables for a while, but it's still not getting you to that same level of employment that you were. And yeah, to find a job in your field of, whatever it may be, some jobs are easier to find than others, but but I can, friends that I know and whatnot, I mean, it takes 4 to 6 months to find a job, and they're legitimately looking every day trying to find that. They're searching the job boards, they're putting the applications in, they're going through the interview processes, all of that. It just takes time.
Yep. I have a big problem with so like how our Kansas unemployment system works now. Outside the technical issues, outside of people not getting that $600 extra in their unemployment, outside of 1099 workers and contractor workers not getting their money, is the fact that they're expected to immediately go back to work, and that takes away time they have, one, to find again a job in their field of work, but also two, it's a time to own on your own skills and practices as well.
Sure.
It's been a while since I've been furloughed and laid off. I'm kind of furloughed right now.
Sure. Yeah.
At least I'm not drawing an income from a business not bringing in income. So
right.
I furloughed myself, right?
Right, effectively.
Right, exactly. So, but when I was unemployed, man, it's been years since I technically didn't have a job. I did other work, as you know.
Right.
But I took that time to, one, go back to school.
Yeah.
And, get a degree in a field that I like, which is political science, economics, and public administration, right?
Right.
And sometimes those are decisions that don't come overnight. They take time to work on and get there.
Sure.
I was 29 when I went back to school.
Mhm.
Katie, it was a tough decision for me to make, right?
Sure. Yeah.
But the expectation of unemployment was, well, you have to go work, and we're going to put you to work, and we're going to train you how to work. And it's like
I know how to work.
I don't need that. You know,
Yeah. Right.
I just lost my job. I'm just trying to figure out what my next step is.
Well, that's the having some reflection time isn't necessarily, or you don't want to push. The idea is to find the right job next, right? If you can, and because you
one that
want,
won't back in unemployment.
well, right, yeah, right,
Right.
exactly. So finding the right fit, having some reflection time. Yeah, I think after every job that I've had, having some time to really think about what is it that I liked about that job, what was I good at, what was I not good at, what did I not like about that job, that then helps you decide what your next step is going to be. And hopefully that next step is the one that, is the 20-year job. I mean, that doesn't happen that often anymore, but in theory, right? That you find that thing.
That's your job.
Yeah. Yeah. But, it's, I think you're right. Having some reflection is important.
I'm going to tell a funny story, and then we're going to move on to a different subject.
Okay.
You've been on for a whole hour. Can you believe it?
Oh my God.
Hour on the camera.
Oh my goodness.
Laura does not like being on camera like this.
No, I do like this. I don't like doing the whole hold it up and I have to just speak into nothingness. This I like, actually. I can handle the back and forth. It's this. I can't maybe see what I'm doing, but like having your own little camera and you're supposed to do these selfies. I hate that. I'll do them. I hate it.
Yeah. But so talking about reflection and things like this and opportunities that I've had that probably a lot of people haven't had, and it may speak to my just my privilege. Okay.
Okay.
But, when I was self-employed, and then like you said, I reflected. So what don't I like about being self-employed? And I thought, I really like health insurance paid for by an employer. And I also like making sure that I have a stable paycheck every single week, right? Because self-employed, you don't always get a paycheck every week. No. Maybe once every 2 months. But so I went back to work and I worked for somebody. Mm-hmm. I lasted for 90 days. And after 90 days, I reflected and I said, what do I like about being employed? What do I like about being self-employed and not employed? I go, I hate working for somebody.
Yeah. Yeah. So
does that outweigh the good? Like, yes, it does. I'm out,
Right.
So, I found my calling being on my own, being self-employed, 1099, things like that. There are a lot of subjects we could talk about. I'm looking in the feed, and there are gun questions.
Oh, no.
So,
okay, here we go.
So, Steve, I want you to know that the gun topic is that it's controversial. There are a lot of elements to it, okay? Yeah. And I can tell you right now that Lombard and I are on kind of the same side of the fence, but I lean towards the crazy side, and she leans towards the sane side. Okay. Do you remember my gun?
I do remember. I do.
That's right.
Yeah, okay. I do. So, yeah, I don't know if you want to share that with the public or not, but I do. I remember.
Well, in essence, it's about. I think if you want to have gun control, that you have to hold gun manufacturers and bullets. I said bullet manufacturers liable, right? Yep. And what you see is the cost to own a bullet or a weapon would go up. And typically speaking, someone who's going to fire a bullet is going to think twice about firing. Oh, she's off. Are you back on now?
I am. Yeah, we both popped off there for a second.
I don't want anything to do with this conversation.
I'm leaving. See you later.
But someone's going to think twice about firing a $1,000 bullet versus a 10-cent bullet, right? Or a dollar bullet. That was my take on it. Laura Lombard completely disagrees with me, but
I do.
Steve asked a question.
Yeah.
And the question was, why should the Second Amendment be limited? And here's what he's talking about. If an AR-15 and a Remington 700 both shoot the same rate of fire, projectile, what is one villainized because it looks tactical and the other looked as a hunting rifle?
Oh boy, here we go. Okay.
Again, this is a can of worms.
Yeah, that's okay.
And she's on the spot, guys. So Sometimes you got to research a little bit more and things like that. But
Yeah.
what's your take on what Steve is talking about this?
Yeah. So, okay. I think we have to go back to my last campaign for a second. I guess where I've decided, Steve, I'm going to answer your question, but I'm going to answer it. I'm going to say something first and then I'll answer it. In my last campaign, I went after AR-15s more than I think I'm feeling now. And not because I still don't like them, and I still don't love the idea of them being on our streets, and the fact that they've been used in a lot of school shootings is not comforting to me. But I think where I've decided that I'm going to align my gun policy is with Moms Demand Action. And they are not calling for that. They are asking, for legislation around universal background checks, red flag laws, teaching, being more advocates for teaching gun safety in general. And I've learned more over the last few years. And again, I have their personal feelings, right? But that is
Kansas will teach you about guns, won't they?
They do. I mean, absolutely. And I think, in fact, during the last election, I was talking with still a supporter of a moderate Republican who is a police officer, and he took me shooting, including AR-15s, and he was really trying to, talk about kind of the question that you posed in your the statement you posed in your question regarding one rifle versus another rifle, right? And what's the difference on these things? I'm still not, in terms of the different types of rifles, I'm not going to claim to be an expert by any shape or form. So I guess that brings me back to where I've decided to align my gun policy is with Moms Demand Action and focusing more on universal background checks and red flag laws and gun safety, that type of thing.
And just so you know, like I support Laura 1,000%, not just because she's a Democrat, not just because she's a friend, but because she's intelligent and this person here looks at all sides and has empathy, and that's a thing that you don't find in a lot of politicians or candidates or just people in general. Okay, empathy factor, right? My pushback is those red flag laws. And I think I'm worried about that. I think we need to sharpen this up a little bit.
Sure.
I think every reasonable person would agree to those. You call it a universal background check. I call it a common sense background check across the table. So, like, Kansas has the trade show loophole, the private sale loophole. You got Laura. The state of Kansas wouldn't expect me to run a background check on you. Right now, right. If I knew you were a felon, you took that gun and killed somebody, I could be held liable for that. That's a little different,
right?
But if you didn't pass that background check, I couldn't sell you that gun. And whether it's private sales, those trade show loopholes, those items absolutely 1,000% need to be closed up, cinched up, and it's absurd that it ever got to the point that happened. The other one is the grandfather loophole. So grandfather passes away and
says,
you can have my AR-15, right?
Right.
But my grandson has a violent felony on his record.
Yeah.
Should your grandson get that gun? State of Kansas says absolutely.
Mm-hmm. I mean, at the end of the day, you want to keep guns out of the hands of people who are going to do harm to other humans, right? And that's really the biggest concern around it. And like I said, I mean, I am a person who's able to distinguish my own personal feelings on something versus what public policy should be. And there is a difference. There's a difference in a lot of issues, right? That one might have, and you have to determine, okay, what are my personal feelings, but what should the public policy be?
So I've had you on for an hour and 8 minutes, Laura Lombard. We've talked about your campaign. We've talked about what have we talked? We talked about a lot of things.
Yeah, we covered a fair amount of ground. I hope I didn't get myself into trouble somewhere along the line here.
No, I think everything was fine. I don't think anybody's watching for any mistakes there.
There's going to be an ad. Laura Lombard said blah 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 blah.
No, yes, those good old campaign ads, right?
Yep, got to watch out for those.
I did a Lombard.
You did. You completely did a Lombard.
I've been stealing that a lot more often. Uh, is there anything that we didn't touch on you'd like to talk about briefly?
Oh, I know. I think we've covered a lot, and I'm good.
So before we go, this is
Yeah.
important for me to communicate to the people in Kansas watching about why a person like Laura Lombard would be good for not just public policy when we're talking about family medical leave or universal health care, but her background. Her background is very important. Tell them a little bit about your background.
Sure. So grew up here in Wichita. And then I left for college. I went to KU for my undergrad, got a political science degree. And I know Patrick doesn't like KU, but it's too bad. Brock Chalk. And then I left and went to Chicago for a few years, worked as a paralegal there, and then got into Johns Hopkins School of Advanced International Studies. So that's based in DC. So that brought me there. Spent 7 years in Washington, finishing my master's, and then I worked with Secretary of Defense William Cohen at his consulting company in DC. That was a great experience because I got to learn about all different aspects of how the government works, all different aspects of different sectors. So whether it was defense, energy, health, uh, commodities, you name it, we touched it. So that was an incredible experience. And then from there, I really wanted to work more in the Middle East. I had done quite a bit of studies in that while I was at Johns Hopkins. So I started an organization that helps companies here in the United States export into Middle Eastern countries. So I did that for about 5 years. Then came back to Kansas and ran in the special election initially. That's how I got started into the political world here in Kansas. And then was hired to help build a company that does online workforce development. Did some work in the food safety industry there and otherwise through that company. And then lastly, did some work with the Clean Energy Business Council here in Kansas as well as a consultant. More recently, I had started right before this whole COVID-19 started. I had just incorporated in January a new international trade company. That's going to be on hold for a little while for both congressional and obvious reasons. So,
What can you do, right? I mean,
right, wonderful timing.
mhm.
But it is what it is, and so that's going to be on hold for the foreseeable future, and maybe indefinitely when I win Congress. So, so right now my focus is on winning this election.
Absolutely, but I wanted to kind of make sure I highlight the fact that a lot of people will talk about trade. I think you're
Mhm.
knowledgeable and you understand it, and the comparative advantages of trade. And
Right.
there's a lot of markets, emerging markets that I know Kansas, who I think we feed. What was the statistic? We feed 20% of the world.
Something like that. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
substantial. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if you're a farmer here in Kansas and you're worried about exporting your goods,
Talk
uh,
to me.
talk to Laura.
Yeah.
uh, and she could probably assist you somehow, but especially in Congress, talking to her about things that are going on,
Yeah.
challenges in the city of Kansas, so that way your congressperson, Laura Lombard, can assist you in making those changes to help you export the
Right.
need, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So,
Find ways that solve the bigger systemic issues that aren't necessarily going to cost our farmers and our manufacturers in our district in the way that we've seen in the last few years.
absolutely.
Yeah.
The tariffs and we've seen some bounce back in crop prices. Uh,
Hmm.
a good yield produced that for us. So luckily, a good yield almost offset the detriment that those tariffs and those,
Cost.
those small trading wars we've had over the
Right.
so coming up on 3 years, 4 years now.
It's not quite 4 years, but yeah, longer than we expected for sure. And
Yeah.
all this, I'll use this as an example. One of the issues that rightfully we need to deal with China is, their stealing of our intellectual property. That is a real issue. I don't think the way we've gone about it though is one effective for that issue, and two, it's been so painful for people in a way that wasn't necessary. if it was me and I was looking at trade policy around China in that regard, you look at the companies that are doing it. So, for example, was it Huawei? I think it was Huawei that to their credit, at least briefly, the Trump administration did put sanctions on that particular company, right, for misbehavior. It wasn't IP or intellectual property theft, but they had misbehaved in a certain way, and I don't remember the specifics anymore. But in any case, that's the type of action we should be taking. We should say to companies, look, if you steal our intellectual property, we will not allow you to sell into the United States. We will sanction you. We will that individual company. I think that sends a much bigger message to Chinese companies as a whole when that happens. And what can the Chinese government do, right? I mean, they're legitimately wrong. You're taking away the power, right?
They are wrong,
I mean, if you can prove, I'm going to use the word prove. If you can, quote unquote, prove that a company has done that, and you're going after the company, not the entirety of the country, it's a much more it's using a scalpel instead of using a hammer, right? I mean, that's how you need to look at it. And I think there are certainly ways that our government can do that. We do that all over the world where we put sanctions on given companies for misbehavior of various kinds. It's completely doable, and it would still allow markets to be open. So these big sledgehammer type actions that our government's taking right now is much more to the detriment of us than it is to the countries and the companies that are the problem.
Speaking of markets, what stock are you investing in?
Right now, I'm not putting any money in stocks right now. Not because necessarily of any, I'm just my money's going elsewhere right now.
I'm a clean energy guy. You know this. Like,
oh yeah,
I feel like we need to produce more wind energy here in the state of Kansas, solar energy.
Solar, yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. I diversified my portfolio and bought a lot of ExxonMobil.
That's fair. I can understand the logic on that.
Dividend option. So
yeah, I completely understand the logic on that one right now. I was just saying to Johnny's dad last night. I was like, look, we gotta buy some oil tankers and buy some, or actually more to the point, not have us buy it, be able to be paid to have the oil with the $37 pricing right now that they're paying apparently.
Yeah,
that's not realistic, obviously, but it was funny.
Well, they have to sell it off, obviously, to show the stockholders that they could actually sell their product.
Right.
I mean, there's a shelf life on refined oil.
Right.
But I thought it was interesting. Gas prices were $1.33.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I know. I bought some.
Well, and that's the tax that the state of Kansas charges for gas, right?
Really?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is, because it's negative. It's a negative on the gas.
Right.
Tax.
We were paying for the tax.
Right, we were paying for the tax. So I'm like, oh, doggone, $1.33. That's
we're supposed to be paid to get gasoline right now, right?
Dang it! They said they're paying us. Yeah, they pay us.
Right.
But yeah, so we did chime on a lot of stuff. I appreciate you coming on tonight, Laura. Before we go, usually I start a session. Usually I would start a session asking this question, but this is very unique, and that COVID-19 quarantine. Walk me through a day in the life of a candidate through COVID-19.
It's really boring.
Okay, thank you, Laura Lombard.
Yeah, no, it's true. A day in life. Well, okay, so a day in life of COVID-19, also with a baby. So, first part of the morning is getting up and getting him, taken care of and giving him some attention and whatnot. And then quite literally, the reason I say it's really boring is I'm on the phones all day, like all day, every day, just on the phone. And which is great. I had some good calls today that were not necessarily fundraising calls too, that, just talking with constituents. And that part I enjoy. The fundraising, anyway, it's what you have to do, but that's what I do.
Part of campaigns is the fundraising. Absolutely.
Oh my God. Yeah, it's constant. So I mean, we're doing well. That's good. I'm definitely, getting a lot of great people.
Don't tell them that.
I'm not telling them how much.
Okay, cool. Don't tell Ron that information.
No, but things are good. And we're getting money in, and that's the main thing in terms of getting things really going. But yeah, and then so I do 2.5 hours of that in the morning, and then I take a little break for lunch, and then I do 3 more hours in the afternoon to do that. And then the evenings, it's a lot of this now. I mean, I'm doing a lot of meet and greets through the internet. I've got one tomorrow night with Cali County. Got another one on Saturday with Butler County, the Democratic groups to start off with, and that type of thing. So I mean, a day in the life right now, it's not parades currently. It's not and it's not real.
You're saying you're not shaking hands right now?
I'm not doing a whole lot of shaking of hands right now. No, not at all, actually. So I'm doing some writing here and there. I mentioned that I'm hoping to have an article published here this week or so. But for the most part, it's me like this all day, every day. This is me.
Oh, that's horrible.
It's it is what it is. But
People, you say talk to people, constituents, and that's always, it's not like a recorded town hall that you hear from a Ron Estes or
right.
Roberts. This recorded town hall about what Trump wants him to rubber stamp.
Right.
There's a reason why we call him Rubber Stamp Ron.
There is a reason. Yeah.
So, last part of this, we're at hour 21 minutes. I said 90 minutes tops for this entire broadcast.
Right, taking up the whole thing. Poor Michael's not going to have a chance to talk.
But let's do some plugs. So, if someone were to want to find your website, what's the address?
Yep, pretty easy. So it's LauraLombardForKansas.com. And if we want to put that, can I put that into the chat?
Not in this chat. You'll have to go on Facebook, but I can do it.
Okay.
Let me get that pulled up.
Cool.
Okay, I'm gonna do one pinned comment.
There you go.
So Laura Lombard for Kansas, all spelled out.
All spelled out.
Okay. And what about your Facebook page? What's your
It's at Laura Lombard, or sorry, Laura for Kansas, that one.
The number 4 or spelled out?
Spelled out. And same thing with Twitter. Laura for Kansas, all spelled out.
All right. In the Facebook feed, I'll put that in the YouTube feed as well. Oh, by the way, I didn't even mention we're live on YouTube too.
Hello, YouTube people.
Yeah, so we have about 8 on right now on Facebook, and we have about 22 on YouTube.
Nice. Welcome everybody.
Anything else you wanna plug?
Well, I got to do the donation plug.
Please.
Yeah. So more than just that, though, if you'd like to help the campaign, the best ways to do that are the following. 1, donations are always appreciated. We've got to fund the campaign, of course. 2, if you'd like to we do have a virtual phone bank set up. So if you'd like to help us make calls to voters, would love to get your help on that. Just liking any of the Facebook page, the Twitter page, and sharing our posts, the ones that you like and that you think resonate. Please share those with your friends. That really helps get out, who I am and what I stand for to your networks. So those are some of the easier ways. And if you'd like to volunteer more fully, then reach out. You can do that through the website. There's a button to push if you want to volunteer. So please sign up to do that.
And you can always, if you forget the website or whatever, you can always just message me.
Yep.
I'll put you in contact with Laura. I happen to have her on my phone, so which is handy when you get
the connection to the congressional candidate.
That's right.
Yeah.
What I will say on your website, it's very easy to donate money. There's small denominations or larger ones. There's a recurring option. I strongly recommend, if you can afford, $50, $100 a month to support this great candidate, just go ahead and sign up for a recurring payment. That way she knows that money's coming in. She can plan accordingly.
Right.
In the state of Kansas, you can still donate, and I'll tell you the reason why. She's in Congress, guys. I mean, the bills that she's going to work on and pass, they're still going to affect you.
Right.
And you want to have a candidate, one, that you can reach out to, relatable, as empathy, and also, sorry to say, knows what she's talking about. So yeah, if you're out of state, if you're out of Kansas, don't worry about it. Go in there, make a donation. She accepts phone banking around the United States as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Virginia, Florida, Georgia, California, Washington,
Yep.
even Nebraska,
Even Nebraska.
and Missouri is okay too. Phone bank, you can definitely phone bank as well.
Yep.
Laura, we've this is like the third time I said we touched on a lot of stuff today. I appreciate you giving me an audience and your attention today. We talked about some really hard topics. You've impressed people in the feed. I hope you go back and look at it and see the good comments there.
Great.
But keep up the work. It would absolutely just make me hot if Ron Estes got another 2 years.
I know. We can't let that happen.
No, we absolutely can't. I just,
No.
I think the last original thought Ron Estes had was in Century 2 when he decided to have the meatballs over the chicken.
I remember that. Yeah.
So, yeah, there you go. There you go. So, once again, thanks for coming in.
Yep. Thanks for having me, Patrick. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. I hope we do this again.
Yep. We'll do it again.
Awesome. Take care, Laura.
Yep. Take care. Thanks, Patrick. Bye-bye.
Bye. So, ladies and gentlemen, that was Laura Lombard. Now it's the Patrick Thorpe Show. Yeah, she's just an awesome candidate. Like I said, I've known her since she got involved with Kansas politics. Just sharp as a tack, quicker than a whip. Great person to know. So my other guest that I had lined up does not look like does not look like it'll be going on tonight. So we're gonna push that to next week. I said an hour and a half. It's been an hour and 26 minutes. It was a great conversation. But I'm glad you all showed up. You all commented. Again, you can find me on my Facebook page every Wednesday night for tentatively named Political Potluck. We are hoping to have some Republicans come on as well. We're just now trying to, get our game, get our footing, and find out our voice, right? So again, thanks for joining in, and we'll see you next week. You can follow her again at LauraLombardForKansas.com, at Laura for Kansas at Facebook, at Laura for Kansas for Twitter. You can follow me again on Facebook, or you can follow me on my YouTube page. The YouTube link will be posted in the comments. Just hit that subscribe and alert yourself to all new videos. This has been Wednesday Night Political Potluck. I'm Patrick Thorpe, your host. We'll see you next week, guys. Take care.